worst state of movies that might even lead to the drink.
Hey everybody, Wildman Wes here, and welcome to the Worst State of Movies, where we look at 50 movies from the United States that are considered the worst of the worst. And at the end, I decide whether or not they are worthy of said title. It is time to get back on that aeroplane and see where we go next. We're moving back from the West Coast to the East Coast to the Big Apple of New York, home of Madison Square Garden, Central Park, and so many other venues that are near and dear to the New York native. But I digress. We're going to talk about a movie that was made in New York. We have talked about this before when it comes to adaptations of fictional and even sometimes mythological characters being a hit or a miss. Today's topic is going to be 1970's Hercules in New York. This movie follows the half-deity, half-human Hercules in Mount Olympus, where he feels he is just sitting around with nothing to do, and he wants to go down to Earth to see some things that his father Zeus has seen before him. Now Zeus, he's very, very old school, get off my lawn, and says, you're not going to do that. Hercules is not listening at all. Zeus eventually says, okay, I'm just going to fire down some thunder and lightning on you, and accidentally sends Hercules to Earth, where he winds up in the middle of the ocean and rescued by a naval ship. These humans are thinking, okay, he's just a really big, strong guy in the middle of the water, and his ego and bravado shows that he feels better than them and is fighting them, getting into trouble as usual, until he finally realizes he wants to just get off the ship and see the world. When he does this, he meets a pretzel vendor named Pretzi. Man, the writing was really lazy on the character names. Pretzi shows Hercules around, and they walk across a university where some athletes are practicing for track and field competition, with Hercules being a Greek deity, and with the Olympics and whatnot, he shows off his athletic abilities, and a professor at the university and his daughter Helen are very intrigued and want to get to know more about him. When they do, Helen realizes Herc is a bit of a brute and doesn't really know what to think of him until after he asks her out on a date to show his tender side. They go on a carriage ride, and a bear from Central Park Zoo breaks free, and Herc has to go one-on-one with a goofy guy in a bear costume. After Pretzi finds out about the fight between Hercules and the bear, he suggests to Hercules that maybe he should become a professional wrestler. Herc agrees, and when he's in the midst of his tour of doing some professional wrestling, some of the promoters bring in some goons and some thugs to extort him on some of the money that he's making. Man, I really think some veterans might be getting PTSD hearing this story. Herc eventually evades them, and while he's evading them, meanwhile, back at Mount Olympus on the Legion of Doom, so to speak, Zeus and Juno, or Hera, his wife, are bickering like they normally do about what is going to become of Hercules. Zeus sits vigilant, getting some ideas. Meanwhile, Juno skids away to talk to one of the deities known as Nemesis to find a way to remove the divinity and strength of Hercules. When they do this, they go and talk to Pluto, Hades, Lord of the Underworld, to find a way to remove Herc's divinity and strength by challenging him with a weightlifting contest with a competitor known as Monstro. Hercules accepts the challenge, but doesn't realize in the midst of it, he lost his divinity and strength. And in the weightlifting contest, he loses. And when he loses, Zeus realizes that something's wrong. Nemesis eventually rats out Juno for the whole ordeal of taking away Hercules' divinity and strength. When Hercules loses the weightlifting contest, some of those goons I mentioned earlier from the pro wrestling industry are demanding money, and there's a big cat and mouse chase between the goons and Hercules and Helen and her dad and Pretzi all around New York until Zeus is able to help save the day by sending down Atlas and Samson with their super strength. Once Zeus is able to give Hercules his divinity and his strength back, the goons are escorted away, and Hercules realizes his fun on Earth is over, and he goes back to Mount Olympus, and Pretzi is alone and sad, but gets a voice audio on a radio from Hercules reminding him that they will always be friends because of the kindness that he gave him. And that's kind of one of the big messages about this film. Until Zeus at the end goes down to New York to have some more fun of his own. It's nice to see that some things never change. That's the best way I could describe this movie without giving too much away. It is over 50 years old and on Tubi, and if you're in the mood for it, go on the site, watch it, for better or worse. However, it is now time to talk what I like and what I don't like about Hercules in New York. We're going to start off what I like about the film. I would say, in a weird way, the goofy guy in a bear costume. Let's face it, anytime a human is in a goofy animal suit fighting another person without a costume on, it's funny. There was a movie that came out a few years prior to this known as Santa Claus vs. the Martians. I rest my case. I do appreciate what the cast did for this movie, because this was one of Arnold Schwarzenegger's first films ever. We also have people like Artie Stang, we also have Tanny McDonald, we have Michael Lipton, we have Dan Hamilton, we have James Karen, we have Tony Carroll, we have scores upon others. Most of these names I really didn't understand or know, because as a film buff, some of them it just threw me off guard. However, James Karen I recognized from the Return of the Living Dead movies, and Tony Carroll I recognized for being Beastman in the 80s adaptation of Masters of the Universe. So at least at that point, I also had Arnold in the corner. 3 out of the group ain't bad, right? Another positive takeaway that I will say about this movie is that Hercules' culture shock when going from Mount Olympus down to Earth and not knowing how to truly interact with humans. Yes, it can be a little bit aggravating because of the fact that you have a half-deity talking about how much importance they have or strength that they have, and realizing that when you're around a bunch of normal humans, you gotta tone it down a little bit. And Hercules eventually does. And I guess you could say it's poetic in a way. But what's not poetic about this movie are the things I don't like. The biggest thing that I have an issue with is the fact that the character names, especially for the Greek deities, you have the Greek names of Zeus and Hercules. Everyone else, Juno, otherwise known as Hera. You have Mercury, otherwise known as Apollo. You have Hades, otherwise known as Pluto. It's based on the Roman names. Now, what I'm saying is, there is no right way to name the characters. However, when you put some of column A and some of column B together, for those that are familiar with one and not the other, it can get a little overwhelming. And for me, I didn't find myself being overwhelmed. I found myself going, which side of the mythology are we going with this? Because I felt that it just was muddy. And if the brain part of my irritation wasn't bad enough, my ears definitely had another issue. I'm aware of the fact that when it comes to some films, especially depending on their budget, you may not be able to get the rights for a lot of music. Whether it's something that is popular at the time, or just something that is famous and has been used in so many other films that there might be some form of payment for royalties to use said music. This movie used, for lack of a better phrase, a looped Greek instrumental for the entire film. This movie was about 2 hours long, and after a while, it feels like a sanity test. I'm not saying that Greek music is bad, it's just when you hear the same song over and over and over again, eventually your sanity starts to pull and wane away from you. I know this firsthand being a dad now and hearing the same songs every day, every hour, on the hour. Okay, I'm getting off topic on that last rant about music being a dad because we're talking about a movie, not my personal life. Time to grade. I've brought up the things that I liked and what I didn't like about this film. Now it's time to really bring it home. The acting in this, slightly dry. Very dry, actually. However, when it comes to the situation with these Greek and Roman mythology characters and real-life setting, it almost feels like a parody. And when I look at that, and not just that, I have watched this before, many a times. Rewatchability? It's there. It really is. And when I mention parody, there is one Greek playwright from the comedic verses, Aristophanes. He would stand up and applaud this because it really is a parody of Greek mythology and Roman mythology and just everyday life. And with that, I would stand up and agree. That being said, Hercules in New York, you live to see another day from the underworld. It's not just because I gave a thumbs down to Batman and Robin so Arnie doesn't get mad for another one. This one actually can hold up, as weird as it sounds. And if you don't believe me, watch it yourself. We hope you enjoyed this review on Hercules in New York. If you've seen this movie and agree with me, leave a thumbs up. And if not, I understand. If there are things that you didn't like, that I liked, or vice versa, put in that comment section below. I really want to see what all you have to say about some of these movies that are given the accusation of being considered the worst ever made. And this way we can either agree or disagree, or find common ground on some of the things that people have said over the years. Apart from that, we hope you share on social media, but most importantly, you hit that subscribe button. Until then, I'm Wildman Wes, and we will see you next time on The Worst State of Movies. Take care.
It's